Hi and welcome to another episode of We Talk. This is Marjorie Morgan and I'm here with a new guest. I'll, as usual, ask my guests to introduce themselves.
Hi, hello. My name is Jermaine Foster. I am the evening show presenter at BBC Radio Merseyside.
Excellent, thank you. So you're a presenter, Jermaine, so it must be really
Mhm.
strange for you to be being interviewed.
Very strange, very strange. I've got to resist the temptation to take over and start asking you questions.
Okay, well, we're going to have a conversation. So I may answer some questions, but I'll veer it back to me asking more about
Okay.
you as we go along. So to start off, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you were born, brought up.
I'm from Birmingham originally, a place called Ladywood, right in the centre of Birmingham. Uh, Grew up there, lived there my whole life until I moved here. I came here when I was 19, I think it was about 2002, the same year that Friends finished. And I've been here ever since. I came here for uni, and like so many people, just love the city, and just didn't. When I finished, when I decided to stay, I was just like, yeah, I'm definitely sticking around, and just stayed like so many people did, and I've been here ever since. And now it's nearly 20 years later, and I'm still here.
Excellent. So you mentioned uni.
Mhm.
Not you came here for uni, but you came here the year that Friends finished. Why the
Yeah,
importance on Friends? Why is
I
that?
just remember, I just remember being in my student halls the first year, and all of us sitting and watching Friends, like the final episode, because it was like a really big deal. I remember like they even had it on in Times Square in New York, and I just remember it being my first year because it was like being away from home and like all these people that you don't really know and you've just met, and we all kind of had this common bond, and it was Friends. So we used to all watch it every week, and then they had this last episode, and that always sticks in my mind that that was the year that Friends finished because that was my first year here.
Are you watching the reruns that are
Do you
occurring
know
now?
what? I always watch Friends, the reruns on Netflix. Friends is like my go-to show. I can easily sit and watch it. But the reunion show that they did not so long ago, I haven't watched that yet. I've been putting it off. I've not watched it, not for any particular reason. I've just not got around to watching it yet. But I am looking forward to seeing it.
You're saving it. You're saving it.
I'm saving it for a special occasion, for a rainy day.
Excellent. Um, you talk about, like most people, or many people that come to Liverpool, you decided to stay after uni.
Hmm.
What was it about Liverpool that made you decide, yeah, I can
Um,
deal with this vibe?
I was fortunate when I came that I met so many people. Like, the friends I met in my first year of uni, because I only did uni for a year. I didn't actually finish. I decided to leave. But the first year I was there, um, the guys I shared the student halls with, they became like really close friends. The first job I got here, like the group of people that all started working in, it was like a pub at the time, and we all started working there on the same day, and there's about 15 of us all working on the same day, and those 15 are like my closest friends to this day.
Oh,
So I was just so fortunate that when I came, I had like this big group of friends that have stuck with me like this entire time I've been here. So it's never been a case of, some people might come and then like their uni friends leave, and then they're here by themselves, and then they've got to make new friends. I've never had that. Like my core group of friends has always been here,
are
so
they
it's made it a lot easier.
are they from Liverpool originally or not?
A mixture. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them moved here like I did, and just stayed. But quite a few of them are from here. But
Mm.
yeah, some moved up here too.
All right. What did you come to study? I know you said you only stayed a year.
Broadcasting, broadcast technology, which, but that was the reason why I left. I mean, I've always wanted to work in the media. I've always wanted to work in radio or television. It's like since I was a kid, and I went to uni to do broadcasting, and I don't know, I wasn't really into the work. Like at college and school, I did enough to pass. I was clever and I did enough to get by, but I wasn't like the extra worker. So coming here to uni and having all this free time and all this stuff, I was finding it really difficult to concentrate. And then I knew that the kind of work I wanted to do if I was to go out and get experience and, really try and get myself out there, plus I knew Media City was going to be built in like 10 years time. So I kind of thought, well, I'll kind of get out there and try and get experience. So it made it easier to sell to my mum when I had a plan that I was going to drop out of uni, but I do actually have a plan, mum. It's not just me just dropping out for the sake of it. So it was easier to swallow.
Yeah, you have to convince the parents.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So how did you move from your first job in the bar with all your friends to working in media at the BBC like you are now?
It's been a long process.
Break it down.
Um, well, working in bars and restaurants and stuff is like the jobs that I would always do. It's like I'd always work in bars, work in restaurants, get good tips and stuff like that, you know. So I would always do those jobs, and then in my own time as a hobby, I would always be doing voluntary work, Radio City. I used to do the voxes for those guys in the mornings, and um, Juice when the Juice used to be about, and down in Birmingham we've got like we had BRMB and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I've always kind of done those voluntary things on my own. And then I actually left Liverpool for about 6 years working on cruise ships, and and was working in the bar originally when I joined. After a year watching, being on the ships and seeing the entertainment team on the ship, I was like, I have to do that. Like I need to be that. So a year of begging and sucking up and brown nosing got me a change of departments. And I joined the entertainment team. And after about 6 months of being in the entertainment team, I got promoted to entertainment manager and did that for about 4.5 years. And then when I came back, I'd had all the experience of like hosting and presenting. And like I worked on a cruise ship that had like 5,000 capacity. So shows in the theatre, you were doing shows to like 1,500 people. So when I came off, I really had that bug and I really wanted to stick with that. Um, I was introduced to Ganan at the Radio Merseyside and other presenters there, and I kind of just would keep going in and helping with Ganan's show and helping on other shows and just doing what I can when I could and just kind of sticking around and being a pest in the station really until they got used to having me around. And then I
It's
remember
worked out
particularly,
well.
yeah, I remember particularly that I was going in quite a fair bit and I was working with Ganan quite a lot. And then I started doing other shows. And then I was like, one day I was like, I wonder if I don't go in, because I wasn't scheduled to go in, it was all my own time. I was like, I wonder if I don't go in, would they actually notice? So I didn't. I stayed home one day and my phone rang. I was like, Junaid, you're not coming in today? And it was the best phone call I'd ever had. I was like, yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes.
Oh, wonderful.
So from then, um, things kind of just started working out. And when paid opportunities come, like to answer the phones and stuff like that, it was just mainly getting a job in the BBC was about patience, really. Just being there when I could and be patient. And an opportunity came up and I went for it. And thankfully, it worked out.
So how long have you been at the BBC now as a permanent member of staff?
As a full time, well, I've had my show for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think about 4 years. Where are we now? 2021. Yeah, probably about 2017 was when I got contracted to come on, and I was probably there for about a year and a bit before doing voluntary work and whatever and stuff before.
So your persistence really paid off.
Yeah, it did. I mean, you, you've got to. So you've got to. Things just aren't going to happen. They're not just gonna. You're not just going to walk into the BBC and just get a job. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
You've got to. You've got to kind of give a little. You've got to give a little, and you've got to be patient. And and I just kind of just stuck it out, and I knew what I wanted. I knew opportunities might come, and when one did, I just went for it.
If you had to break it down, what quantity of persistence, patience, and passion do you think you have to be successful?
You got to have loads of passion. I'd say more passion than anything, because there were days I remember doing the Vox City for Radio City, 7 o'clock in the morning in the rain for free, for a segment sometimes that wouldn't even get used, and it was like, you've got to have that passion. You've got to, because you'd have days where, because you're not getting paid and you just want to stay home some days, There were weeks where I really wanted to kind of just not go in because I'm just thinking, is it really worth it? Are they even paying attention to me? But you've got to keep doing it. You've got to, and persistence as well. You've got to be persistent. You can't, they're going to tell you no whenever you go for anything you do. They're going to tell you no at first, because they want to see how much you want it. So you've got to you got to keep at it. You got to keep your head up. You got to believe. Like I've always believed in myself. I,
Where
I've
does
just
that
have
where does that come from? The belief in yourself.
from my upbringing. I'm from a Caribbean background. Being a young black man growing up, your parents always trying to encourage you to you've got to do it on your own. It's not going to get given to you. I've gone from that mentality of, this guy works, this guy's working at speed one, you've got to work at speed two. It's otherwise you ain't going to get anywhere. Especially being black, it's just not happening. So nowadays, yeah, okay, maybe there are more opportunities opening up, but I've always had that. I'd like to think I've had a good work ethic. Maybe people I've worked with might say otherwise, but I'd like to think I do. But yeah, my parents definitely has always instilled that, belief. You've got to believe and don't feel sorry for yourself.
So do you think it's slightly easier for your generation than it was for your parents' generation? And do you think
Definitely.
it's getting progressively easier for the other generations coming up?
Definitely. I mean, my granddad's generation, my granddad was part of the Windrush generation. He came with a more understanding. It was like they already had this view that they were British anyway. So when they came here, they were almost willing to take the nonsense because they thought they had to because they needed to settle in. My dad's generation was probably the 70s and the 80s, more the Black Panther influence from America, more the defiant, more my dad's quite rebellious, so he was more of that era. Myself, yeah, definitely the opportunities that I've been able to take advantage of, my dad and my granddad definitely wouldn't have had them. And then if I do have kids in the future, I'm sure things would be so different for them. I hope so. Anyway, it seems like we're going in the direction of that.
You've spoken about Black Panther and history.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that the fact that you knew about Black history and you can talk about these things, how do you think that's influenced your life coming up?
Hugely. I'm dark skinned. You've got to have a sense of pride because we talk now about, the institutionalized racisms and all that kind of stuff, but even in the Black culture, there is colorism and things like that, and growing up as a dark skinned Black kid, getting racism from white kids and Black kids. So, you've always got to have this, this inner, this thing of this inner strength, I've always had to have that. So always.
Talk a little bit, if you can, about the racism from the different areas, from white people and from within the Black community as well. How does that affect you mentally?
It does, man. It does. Yeah, of course, you grow in. Where I grew up in Birmingham is predominantly Black. Ladywood is a predominantly Black area. I went to predominantly Black school. I'm one of those people who I think are quite fortunate that I was, Black educated as well. So I didn't really experience too much racism from other cultures growing up. It would there are certain areas in Birmingham where we were kind of told not to go. It's probably the same as anywhere. You kind of know that particular area. So if you go there, maybe you'd get this and that, whatever. So I didn't really experience racism from white cultures probably until I moved here because there's more white people here in Liverpool. From the Black culture, it's, we've always had this, there's stuff that we're talking about now. We're only really interested now about, I mentioned there colorism, being a dark skinned person, you're going to school, all the light skin and mixed race kids are the good looking ones, but the dark skinned ones are the not good looking ones, and it's kind of like you just have to have this thicker skin. And I just got to a point where I was just like, you know what, forget it. Like nobody is gonna. I would have the older people in my family or the older Black generations telling me how beautiful and gorgeous my dark mahogany skin was. But then I've got the kids at school telling me how black and bun up toast I am. So it was this massive contradiction of what am I like? What is this? I really didn't know if I was if I was, not to say good looking or whatever. I just didn't know what on the spectrum I was. I'm getting this message from the adults, this message from the kids, until it got to a point where in my teens where I just thought nobody was happy with what they look like.
Yeah.
Nobody was comfortable with who they are.
Teenage
So
does that to you.
yeah. So then it just when I think I must have got to about 14 where I was just like, this is me, and I'm good with it. And then when I came here in Liverpool, you get like that's when I would experience racism from maybe other cultures, like from the white culture and stuff. But that was something I hadn't experienced before.
And so you didn't experience that until you were in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite unusual for a black person.
Yeah, not predominantly.
Watching.
I mean, yeah, I'd get little bits. Like I said, if I was to leave, I used to play football when I was younger outside of Birmingham. So,
Oh yeah,
on
yeah.
the football pitch, you get the stuff. When I was like 15 or 16, playing in um like West Brom and whatever like that, or Bromsgrove or wherever, like the outskirts of Birmingham Hill, Zoe and whatever. You used to get players on the pitch that would make you little comments here and there, but on a football pitch, you kind of just shrug it
The
off.
microaggressions.
Yeah.
I don't think any black person growing up in England has ever sort of got to their 20s or 30s unscathed and untouched by
No,
some racism or of
no.
some kind. But you mentioned that when you were in Birmingham, you were black educated. What does that
Mhm.
mean?
I was raised by black people, and there was different spectrums of black people sometimes, and I was raised by black people, Jamaicans, hard people, and a lot of people where I grew up, there was a lot of African families as well, and in the summers we'd go to a play scheme, and that play scheme was run by a Jamaican group, and we'd be at the end of the summer, they're cooking us fried chicken and dumplings and stuff like that, and
Hard food.
yeah, man. My teachers at school, we had a black deputy head at my school, and there was a IT teacher, my IT teacher, excuse me, was a mixed race Caribbean lady as well. And, you know, a lot of the influences around me were black. And thankfully as well, my mom and my dad weren't together, but my mom and my stepdad were together for around 20 odd years. I had a good relationship with him before he passed. And my dad, I've got a good relationship with him too. So I was always around black men as well, like, and black men raised in the 60s and 70s are always talking about black history, and
Yes.
you got to have this sense of pride, and you got to know about yourself and know about your roots and your history. And I've always been raised like that. So yeah, I was always raised with strong black, and then the women in my family.
That's something now. That's something. That's it.
That's
Next
another,
level.
that's another story. But yeah, I'm fortunate where I've got a lot of that. I've had a lot of that influence growing up.
So you've had the black pride because
Hmm.
sort of instilled in you from a youth, both within the home and within the school. Fortunately, because not many people have black educate. About your age, my age, can talk about having black educators within England. So that's amazing. So do you, how do you feel that that influence has altered your life to the positivity that you experience today?
Mm. Well, now I know that the position I have now, I take my position very seriously. You know, I'm no, I'm not no like famous celeb or anything like that, but I do have a platform, and and with the BBC as well, they're known for maybe for once definitely having this whole one in, one out policy when it comes to black people. So I know now that I've got a platform and I want to use it. I want to get as many black voices and faces coming in and out of that station as I can while I'm there. So my history has taught me that I want to be surrounded by my black people. And that's not saying, and I got anything against my white counterparts. Of course I don't. I mean, I'm here in Liverpool. I moved here by choice. I got so much love for my white friends. I don't even have to go into that. But I'm in a position now where I've got. I mean, I was back in Birmingham not so long ago, and some of the youngers was there talking, and it was one of the most proudest moments of my life. I swear down. like the youngers were having a little arguments against them, like 17, 18-year-olds. And there was an older guy and he was kind of telling them that they need to change their ways, otherwise they're not going to get far in life. And one of them called me over and was like, Jermaine, where are you from? I was like, oh, I'm from around here. I was born, raised over there. What do you do? I was like, I went for the BBC. And he goes, Jermaine was around here and he works for the BBC. Da, 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 da. And he used me as an example of progress. And
Achievement.
I was, oh my God, I can't even tell you how proud that made me feel. I honestly did, but I was in a room full of the man then, so I couldn't I couldn't well up. I had to keep it 100. But
No, well, I'm glad that we're having this opportunity to big you up now, because that is amazing. Because the people, the elders that we used to look up to, now you're big stepping into that kind of role.
mhm,
And as you called them, the youngers, when you have people looking up to you, you've shown that there is a path. You can make the path through your persistence. Follow your passion. You were on a cruise ship. You went for one reason, and then you found passion in the entertainment
mhm.
arena, and you followed that from the sea back to land. And now look at you, you're sort of shining.
I
And
hope so.
no,
I hope
you
so.
are,
And I
man,
just,
you are.
and I just want like that. Honestly, that just made me so proud because that's what I want. I want when you see the news and you see like I'll sit and do my show, and then we've got the top of the hour news, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And so many times I've been doing my show and then I've heard, oh, shooting, Birmingham. And I'll say in my head, Ladywood, Ladywood. And I'm just like, there we go again, and it's just constant. And I'd love the idea that, some of them are looking at me and thinking, Jermaine has gone out and done something. I would love to go. And it doesn't need to be that they need to leave Birmingham to do it. But, that's what I want. My position now, I just want to be, I'll use the word inspiration, but I want to be I want to inspire some of the youngers
You took the
to
words
try and.
out of my mouth. I was going to say inspirational, and you're showing people that they have options.
Mhm.
Because
I mean, I like to. That's what I hope. I hope, and I try to stay true to myself as well. I'm not a posh kid from. I mean, I speak well, but I'm not a posh kid. I'm from Ladywood, Birmingham. You go down Ladywood, you're in the ends. You know, and that's where I'm from. But I don't want to lose that, and I don't want when people are looking at me them to think that I've lost that. I'm still from there. You've got to adjust and change your ways you are and your attitude certain ways to fit into certain places. But
of course.
hopefully when people see me, they see Jermaine and they're still like, wow, that's still Jermaine. He's on the show, but it's still him.
Well, when you're talking about adjusting your ways, Professor Jeff Palmer has said that some people refuse to adjust their ways. If you're going for an interview for a job at a bank and you wear shorts and t-shirt, it's unlikely that you're going to get very far. But if you
Mhm.
turn up with a suit, you'll at least get the interview. So
Yeah.
you have to be willing to sort of not totally change yourself, but to sort of work with the system.
Yeah, totally.
But when we're talking about the system, I just want to bring up a point where there was this report that came out. I think you know which one I'm talking about. I think it's called the Sewell Report, where it said
Hmm.
that you smile.
The
Uh,
institutionalized racism.
yeah, that there is no institutional racism. Have you? What do you think about those conclusions?
I mean, I think I think we as a nation know that that's a joke. I mean, it's a joke. There is.
And talk about your personal experience as well, if you have had any.
I mean, of course, there is. I mean, it's how you mentioned the word before. There's these microaggressions and things that are there, and these little things accumulate to the ideas and the mentalities that people have. I've got into so many places, especially being, going into professional, white areas. I'm around professional white people, and so many times I've had to bite my tongue, and because of comments that were made or conversation starter points where people want to start a conversation at a certain point, and you're like, why do you want to start a conversation there? Like, is it because you've seen a black person thought, let me start the conversation with the West Indian cricket team? It's like, I don't like cricket. Why are you talking to me about cricket?
What do
You
you mean
know,
you don't like cricket?
I don't like cricket. I don't like cricket.
I'm just being
I
devil's
love that
advocate.
song.
You know, it's like, what do you mean you can't dance? What do you mean you can't sing? What do you mean you haven't got rhythm? It's all these
Yeah,
stereotypes that are sort of put
all
on
these
people of
things,
color.
all
Yeah.
these things are there. All these things are there, and then they're just the way. I mean, one thing I've found that has always been, and it's only now that we're talking about these type of things where that names are being put to them, where you start like, I'm starting to feel like I've not been going crazy my whole life,
That's
because
why the mental health bit comes in. Yeah.
yeah, because there were things that I was, especially moving here where I've been around more white people. I've started to think like, am I just making this up? Am I just this? Because I'm a passionate guy, and black people in general, we are loud, animated people. We're passionate. We talk with our hands and we got energy and this. That's just how we are. So I would get into situations, especially working in a bar or a restaurant, because sometimes I'd be working on a Friday or Saturday night. Things are moving fast. People are ratty and short with each other, but that's just the business. The end of the shift, you pour a pint and you have a drink and you move on. But I would get into situations where I would have the same level of rattiness that two other people have had, but yet 10 minutes later, the manager's calling me downstairs. Jermaine, you need to calm down. You're a bit aggressive, and blah 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 blah.
Oh,
And
always
I'm like,
aggressive. Yeah.
and anybody who knows me knows that I am not an aggressive person. So, so that would be a constant thing. I'm a big guy as well. I'm 6'1". So I would get into situations where I would have an exchange of words with someone, and because I'm bigger and I'm moving my hands, it's all of a sudden I'm the aggressor. So I would have a lot of that. I'm a chilled out person. I'm not a person who gets stressed out over things. I'm chilled out. So that is, oh, Jermaine's laid back. He's a cool guy, and da 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 da. And
When you
that in
react,
itself, yeah, it's just there are little things that you would start a job, and automatically, as a black person, they want to put you in a box. You're a black person that likes this and that does this, and you like that team, and you like that music and this. No, why can't I just come here and be a blank slate? And
yeah.
you ask me what music I like and what sports teams I like and what food I like, and don't assume and tell me what I should and shouldn't. And sometimes you tell people you don't, and they want to question you.
Yeah, it's like how dare you?
Yeah.
Because there's what was the thing? Something was on TV and it was said that the people weren't black enough. No, it's the script. They said the characters weren't black enough because they didn't have any black friends. It was Luther. That's it.
Luther.
Yeah. No, didn't eat at black restaurants, Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
restaurants, and didn't have any black friends, so therefore he wasn't black enough.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly to you, now in Liverpool, I was born and brought up in Wiltshire, and my experience, my world is generally a white majority world within the UK. Although, as we know, the global majority of the world is black people, but within this particular environment that we're living, it's white majority. So you have friends within in that area, and your terms of references are the kind of white behavior as well. Because what like musical choices, I like all kinds of music, but people
Same
always
here.
expect me to only like reggae, or
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I absolutely love classical music and jazz, different types of jazz, all kinds of experimental music. It's like, but why? You
Yeah.
know, and
Yeah. I'm
do
the
you,
same. I love
do you
I
ever
love
get
all kinds of same, same. I love, and that was something as well, actually. I will say, when I was growing up, that probably helped my decision to move from Birmingham, because I was already starting to have. I always used to say that when I was younger, I used to really like Coldplay. I still do, but their first album, Parachutes. I remember when that album came out and the song Yellow came out. I loved that song. And at the time, when I was around 14 or 15, and that's the kind of time where you yourself are starting to get your own musical identity. You
Yeah, your
started to
taste,
get,
yeah.
get your own things. And at that point, I was listening to what all my friends were listening to. You know, my parents were listening to reggae and ragga and bashment. My friends were listening to, R&B, Tupac, Biggie, Jodeci, all that kind of stuff. And I love that music. Um, but then I heard Coldplay, and I was just like, I really like this. And I used to secretly listen to them.
Ah,
Like I used to like I always laugh now because it was like I had this secret that I couldn't tell anyone. And I used
the
to listen
secret
to them
Coldplay
secretly.
listener.
Yeah, I used to listen to them secretly on my headphones. And in my room I wouldn't blast them because my stepdad would come in and be like, "What's that?" And because he's playing reggae in one room and I've got Coldplay in the other room. But then starting to like them, I kind of started to like other indie bands like Oasis and Blur and just really start my musical taste just started to change a bit.
Expand, yeah.
Yeah, and then I
You
was like,
you
oh
open
wow,
yourself up to things, and that's
yeah.
fine.
But then you'd speak to people, and then they'll be like, oh, who do you like? And then you'd say, I like, you know, I like obviously R&B and hip hop and stuff like that, but I also like Coldplay, and I also like Arctic
Mhm.
Monkeys, and I also like stuff like that. And then people, yeah, but you like hip hop more though,
Why?
not
Why does
particularly.
that? Yeah,
Yeah, not particularly. And
it's
it's like,
is
yeah,
that
some
a
people
sort
want
of a signature of your character? If you
yeah, especially here. One thing I have noticed here a lot as well, you do get into situations where you will meet, like, say you're at a party or something, and you get chatting to like a white lad or something like that, and they have this image of black guys probably from television, and they want so desperately for you to fit that image that they have got that
mm,
they're ignoring everything you're saying. Like I had this
wow,
boy who used to love Scrubs, and he was so it's like he wanted me to be Turk. Like there's like the two main characters in that is JD and Turk, and it was like he just, oh Jermaine, do you like this? Can you dance like this? Can you do that? I'm just like, mate, no,
wow,
no. And it was just like, but because he seen this black character on television, really, really liked this character, and now he's got a black friend. It was like my black friend needs to be like this guy.
it's,
And it's like, no,
so
I'm not.
that would be the only way that you could sort of mesh the two.
Yeah,
Do you find that often with people that they see you as a stereotype rather than as an individual? And
sometimes,
how does that affect you?
sometimes,
How
but
do you manage it?
well, you can ask my friends. I am not the person to tolerate that. My friends kind of they do get a bit annoyed with me now because I don't let it go, but it annoys me
Why should
that
you let it go?
I'm not your prop for coolness. You know what I mean? Like I will be, we'll be in a bar, and some lad will come over, and I know the difference between someone coming over and saying hey and walking up, and someone coming over and wanting to fist bump you and stand there and talk to you, and just so their friends can see them talk to you, and they can walk off and be like, yeah, I know those black guys over there. I'm not your prop, mate. No. So
I
I'm the
love
type
that.
of person who would tell that person to do what. But then they would turn that around like I'm being aggressive to them.
Aggressive.
It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
hey, no, I
But
don't
then
want to talk. Yeah, I don't have to entertain you. I don't have to talk to you.
that's it exactly. It's about an entertainment level, and like showing coolness. Because I had the experience recently. I was walking back to my car, and somebody shouted out, "Hey man, reggae cool!" and stuff like this. It
Hmm.
was this white person, and I just walked on. And I said to who I was with, I haven't got time for this foolishness.
Hmm.
But if somebody else had approached me and said something about reggae, and they sort of like talking to me and sort of, oh, this, that, whatever, but on a different level, you know when to engage. Like you said, I
Yeah.
think that's perfectly put. You're not anybody's prop and not there for
No.
their entertainment value.
No.
But thinking about um, props, entertainment value, and things like that. You talk about white spaces. What do you ever find yourself as a token black person in a white space?
It's hard not to in Liverpool being here. To thankfully now, I mean, now even in the BBC, we've got more diverse faces, in there now. So it's definitely not the same there now. But not so much now, actually. I will say not so much now. But probably when I first came here, yeah, for sure. I was like the only black bartender in there, or the only black waiter, or a lot of the times you do find yourself as the only black, and you are the talk. I remember going on a holiday once with my mates in the first year, and you do the lads' holiday. You all went to Malia, and you get the printed T-shirts, and everyone's got the name at the back that they don't want. So that's the only reason why I let it slide, because nobody likes the name on the back of theirs, and mine was Token. because
Oh, lovely.
because because I was the token black guy of the group, and I let it go because it was so much worse. There was so much worse names I could have had, so I left that one.
That is serious though. And that's something that to survive often we have to make jokes about
Oh
things
yeah,
in a
God,
certain way.
yeah.
But
Hmm.
I just wanted to sort of go because I lost the first bit of that. But when you're talking about white spaces, what is a white space? And before you answer that, um, I just want to say when coming from the West Country, and I worked and lived in the Shires as well. I'd go anywhere, and but when I came to Liverpool and I started going to art galleries and libraries and things like that, the security guards would always follow me around.
Hmm.
And at first, I just thought they were going somewhere, but then, especially the Walker, it became frequent. Every time I went there, wherever the security guard saw me, they would move and start following me around. And I thought, is this what they do, consider a white space then? Because me, it was just art, and I was just a person looking at it. But
Hmm.
it was as if I was going to soil the art by looking at it. How do you negotiate what other people consider a white space, and what you just consider your city?
I think you just got to have a thick skin. You got to have a toughness. I'm from an area. I'm from. I've said it a couple of times now. I'm from Ladywood, Birmingham. Where you can't be soft where I'm from, unfortunately. So I've got this fearlessness about me where I would just walk into a place and not care. But you do have to just not care. I've got as much right to be in any place as anyone else, and there is no space around here to say that I can't go there. But then I think a lot of places as well that people do see as their own. I remember talking about on my show about the countryside and campsites, because we were talking about all this
Yeah.
staycation business, and finding places to holiday here in the UK. And I remember talking about my show and saying, as a black person, I wouldn't feel comfortable going to a campsite and, going to the countryside and stuff like that. And yes, it's an outside area, but that type of thing is traditionally a white activity. And I'd go there being the only black person there, I would just feel a little uncomfortable in those surroundings. So that's probably more like a white space, those kind of things where you ain't gonna see any other black faces.
Well, as I said, being brought up in the country, I was one of many one of the few black faces there initially in the early 60s, but coming up there are obviously more and more. But nowadays, because black people are more urbanized than ruralized, it does seem like the countryside is a white space, which is why we've got groups like Black Men Walking and
Hmm.
the Black Women Walking group as well that go into the country. Um, why has it taken like movements to sort of reclaim these spaces? Do you think, and a single black person like yourself wouldn't feel comfortable going, but en masse people feel
Hmm.
more comfortable? Why do you think that is?
Because I think it's you mentioned before about just my generation have things easier than like my parents' generation. I think it's generational. I think us as the generation of mine now. I mean, I'm 37, but a lot of my friends have kids. Their kids are like, start in their teens now, mid-teens. Some of their kids, I've got a couple of mates who are grandparents already. But I do think it's that generational thing where you, as a generation, you accept more. Like my grandparent, my granddad, when he came here, wouldn't even question that he couldn't go into that pub. It was like, that's not put that, I go there and he's not going in there. He's going to his social club with his shubs, wherever with his people. My dad would have been from the generation where he's fighting to get in there. Not even because he wants to go in there, but just because he doesn't see why he can't.
Yeah.
Where I'm from the generation now where I can go in there if I want to.
Yes,
whereas
subtle changes and shifts.
Gradually changing. Whereas if I was to have kids now, my kids would probably be owning this place, and welcoming people in. So I think it's over time. That's all. I think it's just the time is, and the conversations that we're having now, even the stuff like people taking the knee and, the fans booing it and whatever, it's causing conversations, that alone, that booing, a kid could be asking their parent, why are they booing? And that parent has then got to explain not only the booing, but the kneeling and why they're kneeling and the whole thing. And it's a conversation. And those conversations are, that's the way that's going to open the door and make things a lot easier, I think, anyway. I hope so.
Yeah, I watched this program the other night. It's called something about 7 yards, about a football player who was injured and he had a spinal injury. And everybody knelt when he was injured. And they said the origin of that was if somebody, whether on your team or it's both in the army and in football and sports, if somebody is injured, you kneel. And so when Colin Kaepernick knelt, it was, for respect and for Black people who are constantly injured. But people don't seem to like that correlation. And with the football, one thing that I'm in the British football, somebody said the other day, okay, so you boo the football players when they kneel, and then you cheer them when they score. How does that work?
People don't see the difference between the two. People haven't said they see this. People have decided to take the offense they want to take from the kneeling. I personally don't see the point of booing, because even if you have an issue with the booing, with the kneeling, you booing puts off a completely different. You booing is basically you saying, I don't respect this movement. That's it. To stand there and say, oh, I don't support this Marxist movement, blah, blah, blah. I'm so sick of hearing people say that, because half the people don't even know what that means. They've just heard other people say and are just repeating it. Yeah. You know that me or you or a lot of these players on the pitch who are kneeling are not about that life. They're not talking about rioting and whatever. It is a simple gesture of acknowledging that people of color in this country are not treated the same. We're not. And it's simple. You kneel just to show that. And this is how we're acknowledging that this is still happening. Well, very simple to me.
Some people think that's a step, or should I say a knee too far to even acknowledge that. But my ongoing concern is for the mental health of the players as well. Because these are supposed to be fans who are supporting them, and yet they're getting booed before they even start. You get all hyped up in the dressing room, you go out there, you're ready to go, you spend a minute, 30 seconds, whatever it is, kneeling, and then you hear this. It's got to affect the way you perform.
Totally. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, England, Scotland are about to play in the Euros. Both of those teams have decided to kneel. That's going to be an echo of boos before a game where people are so hyped up. And why ruin that moment? I mean, why? You got to support your players. The players are saying, because there's so many things that players will want fans to get behind, and people have no issue getting behind it. But racism is a massive issue. So the idea to me that people don't want to do everything they can to try to eliminate something as simple as just acknowledging the kneel. Don't speak for 30 seconds or just acknowledge this kneeling down for 30. You're going to boo that? Why?
Yeah. It's a serious question that many people can't or won't answer because they don't even want to look at that. And thinking about
people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They would much rather that we as black people or people of color would just get on with it and not acknowledge this history. But that can't work. That
Well,
can't work. We've got to talk about stuff like that.
you mentioned about times when you've had to have a thick skin as well, and sort of going in, just because it's going to happen. So we have a certain level of resilience that we have to have going out every day, but at the same time, we don't want the armor to get thicker and thicker as we get older. We want it to lessen so that we can have equality of opportunity and access the same as anybody else. We don't have to put on this extra, like I say, level of armor just to survive. In the news recently, well, I think it's just this week, this new news channel has started. You've probably heard of it.
GB News, yeah.
And they are leading with an anti-woke platform or agenda. When people talk about being woke, what does that mean to you, and what does it mean I don't know whether you can actually say this from your official position, or it's personal things, but what does that mean to you to be woke and to be anti-woke? Are they just phrases for something else?
Well, my understanding of woke is to just be socially aware, to just have your finger on the pulse of you understand that the difference between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, there is a difference. If you're saying Black Lives Matter, you're not saying that all life, that. So when you're woke, I think if I was to say to you Black Lives Matter, a woke person would just be like, yeah, yeah, of course they do. Absolutely, Black Lives Matter, yeah. Whereas an anti-woke person is somebody who will just want to try to pretend that these things aren't going on and not acknowledge that these things aren't happening. Black lives matter, all lives matter, white lives matter, blue lives matter. Like, stop talking nonsense. It's just these
That's so funny the way you say that. But it's a conversation I've had replayed so many times. As soon as you say Black Lives Matter, you always get all the different colours of the rainbow lives matter as well. The woke to me is somebody who is, like you say, aware of the injustice, especially racism. Anti-woke is like saying you're anti-racist, which means you're pro-racist, which means you're a white supremacist. To me, it's as simple as that. Because if you're against equality and equity, you are for inequality, and then you're upholding one system and trying to put down another. Do you think with this news station, with the right-wing newspapers, do you think there is a chance that we are going to come out of this year, from last year with George Floyd, and this year, with the awareness raising, do you think we're going to come out in better shape than we were in 2019?
I think it's always darkest before the dawn, and I think we have got all the stuff that is going on now. It's, the booing and even the fact that there have still been police murders since George Floyd, and the rioting that has gone on, and the Karens, and all of this stuff is, coming to a head. And I think over these next maybe year or so, we've got to grin and bear it, because I don't think it's going to get any better. But I think the reason it's getting worse is because it's not being ignored anymore, and that's a good thing.
That's really hopeful, actually, because sometimes it can get really depressing, thinking it's just getting worse.
It is hard. And last year, I remember, I had a particular time last year where I just was so low, just reading some of the comments on social media, and, some of the conversations I was having with people I thought were friends, and it was just, I honestly, there was a time where for a minute, I questioned living in Liverpool. I was like, have I been disillusioned? Have I been lying to myself this whole time? I really did. But, I do think that it's going to get worse before it gets better. But the reason why it's got such a visceral, reaction, people having such a visceral reaction to people taking the knee and to black tiles and Black Lives Matter is because they've never been forced to look at racism the way they have. And I think so many people have lived their life with black people and people of color in their lives and have treated them a certain way. And in their eyes, they've been treating them equally unfair. And it's only now where they are starting to see that they have actually been racist in certain ways, and they don't like that.
Yeah.
And they're taking it way more personal than it needs to be. It's not you. It's not you, John, Peter, or Mark. It's not. It's collective. It's what you guys do. I say to my friend all the time, he's got a 9-year-old son. I'm like, there's the conversations me and you have about race. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm trying to change the way you talk to your son.
Yes.
So by the time your son gets to our age and he's having kids, his kids won't even question race. Of course, they'll acknowledge black people. I never want my blackness to be ignored. I want to always be black.
What do you mean?
I don't like this thing where we're all the same. We're not the same. No, we're not all the same.
Sorry, you don't want people to say, I don't see your color.
I know. I'm black. I'm a black man. I'm proud of that. I don't want you to. When people say, I remember I had a friend who said to me that her daughter was asking why a kid in the class was wearing a burqa and why the parents of this kid in the class was wearing a burqa. And and she thought she was giggling and like, oh, she looks like this and she looks like that. And then my friend, who felt really proud, she said she's white, and she says to her daughter, don't laugh. We're all the same. Everyone's the same. And she was saying to me, I told my daughter, we're all the same and we should do this. And she was really proud of that. And I was like, I understood her pride. But I told her, no, that's the wrong message. We're not all the same. We are different. Treat people the same, but acknowledge their differences.
Yeah.
If you don't know why she's not wearing that burqa, ask her. Just go and ask her. Just say to her, go walk up to the woman and say, my daughter asked me why you wear the burqa. I honestly don't know. I don't want to give her false information. Who was I going to tell you to get lost?
That is such a simple solution to the situation. Instead of sort of saying, shh, don't talk about it, sort of say, I don't know. If only more people would say, I don't know, and then ask them to do.
Go and ask. Go and ask. The amount of times my friends this last year, and yes, it gets a little tedious, mainly because a lot of my friends here, I'm their only black friend. So I've found like they might be sitting and watching a show and black question comes up. Explain. That's it. But no, it's true. You got it. If you don't know, go just ask. And people know, and they know where it's from. Like we mentioned earlier in the interview, where it's coming from. It's coming from a good place or a bad place. Yeah. I know if somebody's asking me, about they want to know my background. Where are your parents, where your grandparents from? I know the difference between somebody asking that and somebody, the first thing they're asking me, what's your name, Jermaine? Where are you from? Where are your parents from?
Yeah.
Why is that coming to the conversation already?
Yeah, and people don't like the answer when you say you're from Birmingham and your parents are from Birmingham, your grandparents are from Birmingham. They think, yeah, but where are they really from?
Especially when I worked on the cruise ships. Oh my gosh. On the cruise ships, every black person is Caribbean.
Oh, of course. Not
so
African,
me walking around,
Caribbean.
No, Caribbean. So me walking around with my, and especially when I worked on the bar, because there was no British people in the service on the ships. I was the actual only one.
Okay.
And
so you represented Queen and Country.
Yeah. So I'm there, Jermaine Foster, United Kingdom on my badge, and people are reading my, why does your badge say United Kingdom? Because I'm from England. But where are you originally from? And it's just, you get that, and it's constant. And I'm like, well, where are your parents from? And both my parents were actually born here in Birmingham. Well, born in Birmingham. So where are your parents from? They're actually from Birmingham too. Where are your grandparents from? And then they hear the answer they want to hear. Oh, the Caribbean. Okay. Yeah, I knew it.
Yeah, but the thing is with those questions, they want to hear where you're from with regards to like 2 or 3 generations, as long as it ends in the Caribbean or America.
As long as it ends somewhere exotic, yeah.
But then if you start saying, yeah, but 3 generations before my family were stolen from Africa, and that was by white people from England, Spain, Italy. They don't want to hear that bit of the story. Have you ever found that?
No, 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 no. Skip that part. Skip that part. Don't want to hear about that. Don't want to know. Don't want to hear. But that's the problem now. It's an ugly history. I mean, I remember seeing somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about the Germans, and it was like, the Germans aren't ignoring Nazi history. They're not ignoring Hitler. They've acknowledged it. They've embraced it and put it in their education and they teach it and talk about it. And that's the only way you're going to move on from it. What the Western, what so America and the UK are trying to do, are trying to pretend that these things didn't happen. Like they did. Talk about them, teach it, acknowledge it, and then we can move on. Simple, the most basic racism. Well, the most dumbest racist will tell you to go back to where you come from. Even the most stupidest racist will tell you that. If we was teaching in school that Black people have been in this country for not hundreds, thousands of years, simple statements like that would be finished.
There is a reason why it's not taught, because it's about the system perpetuating racism and division, and people who find out about discriminatory practices and the history of slavery, they find out about it on their own, or when they get to meet somebody and they're intelligent enough to sort of interact one-on-one with that person and not to just see them as a stereotype. So it's difficult sometimes to think about the lack of education. Going back to last year with George Floyd, did you find that as much as you want to sort of help people to understand, did you find it tiring at all?
Tedious.
People just kept coming to you with,
it's not for me to educate
their black questions. Yeah.
And on the one hand, you want to help, but on the other hand, it was tedious. It really was. It was constant. I remember having a Zoom, because obviously during lockdown we were all doing Zooms. So there was like every Friday or Saturday night, a group of friends all getting together and having a Zoom, 4 or 5 of us all on a Zoom. And it was like questions being thrown. It was like question time, being thrown at me. But what about this? But what about this? But what about this? What about this? And this. And, in a way, it's good because they do want to know.
Yeah, they're showing their willingness.
Innocent, and it's completely innocent from the point of view of the question asker. But for me, it was just tedious because I was the only Black friend in the group. So it's like all questions come aimed at me. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't again. Really? Again? Every conversation kept turning to racism and stuff like that. But,
I can see that, because it was an attempt to show that they're engaged and okay, we missed the boat, so to speak, but we want to show you that we're doing something now. So let me ask you this question. Can you point me in this direction? For me, it was just like, I'm not doing your work anymore. You do it. There's a list of resources out there. You can go and search for them. I may be your only Black friend, but like you said earlier, Jermaine, and I have to question this sometimes when people say that they are your friend and they don't understand how you experience the world and the racism that you encounter. Are they really your friend, or are they an associate? That may seem a little harsh, but have you ever considered that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to, but you're going to find yourself a very lonely person if you kind of put everybody in that, because you can't expect everybody to have the same. And if everybody had the same background as you, wouldn't learn anything. I've got friends who have from money. I've got one friend who, his dad bought a house one year and we lived in that house, and the idea of money to him was just, it was just this thing that he just didn't really think of. He went on holidays, he had a car, and he didn't have to think of that. And I learned so much from him, like, the way he looked at things and the way, I learned from him, he learned from me. And these type of things, you need that. It has to be different. Everybody's never going to have the same background. And when you're from a minority background, you know that you've got this unique lived experience. Because even two black people don't have the same, experience.
Well, exactly. And
You
that is
know,
really, really an important point as well, because your experience growing up is going to be totally different to mine, because you're born in Birmingham and I was born in Wiltshire. Not big,
hmm
and just because we're both black, it doesn't mean that we've had the same experience. Because your education experience was totally different to mine. I would have loved to have black teachers. Absolutely adored it. Didn't have
hmm
that. But do you think there are many or any compromises that we should continue to make as we go through life, and how important are those compromises to our sanity?
us as black people or people of
Yes.
color,
Yeah.
yes and no. You have to make compromises sometimes. You have to. We I think, yeah, we'd have to. You don't want to compromise obviously too much. You don't want to give away everything about yourself and completely assimilate into society. But there are you, we can meet each other, halfway. I think as yeah, as but and especially, there are certain, you go to the more rural parts of the country, the inner city Birmingham, inner city London, inner city Manchester, where the black people have got a lot more influence from maybe a Caribbean culture or their African cultures and stuff, and they're a bit more harder to society.
Mm.
That way of living, probably that's not gonna work in, in maybe a corporate society or whatever. So you're gonna have to compromise little parts of yourself, but not everything, because they they've not experienced like my presenting style and the energy and the talk and the swagger that I bring to my show at Radio Merseyside. They've not had that because they've not had a black full-time daily presenter before. Obviously, when I went in, I crossed the T's and dotted the I's and spoke a little clearer, But as time goes on, my good evening Radio Merseyside could easily slip into a Wagwan Merseyside. It's like, and it's more accepted because people get to know you. So maybe at the start you've got to play the game, but as time goes on, you bring in your own things, you bring in your own influences, you let your guard down a bit more, and you can only make changes from within.
So your identity is morphed, but it's not really the core of your identity hasn't disappeared at all. How
No.
important is that? If you look back as a young man to where you are now, still young man, but a little more mature
Youngish.
than 18.
Youngish.
Yeah. How do you think your identity, the core of your identity, is stood firm throughout that time?
I'm proud of my identity and who I am because I know, like I said, where I'm from in Birmingham. If I was to go home and be any different and any truer, my peoples would tell me. They would tell me. They would not have me coming back. When I go home, I chill with my peoples. I'm chill with my family and my friends, and they know me. They know how I am, and they'll tell me. They'll tell me. They will. I remember when I first did my show and I went down to Brom and I let them listen to my show, and a couple of them said, you sound like a white boy," you know. But that was just because I was talking a little nicer, trying to be a bit more professional at the start. But as now, when if they listen to like one of my dad actually listened to the show recently, and he goes, "Yeah, I listened to the show recently. It sounds so much more like yourself now, Jam. So much more like you." And it's just like, yeah, because over time you had to. But yeah, I know if I was to ever start to forget where I'm from or who I am or whatever, I will go back to Brum and get snatched back down to reality
I
so
love
fast.
that. Snatch back.
Yes, so fast. Get cuffed around my head, like
Yeah.
get one of
Oh,
them around the head.
it'd be like the side eye. Oh, what's wrong with you?
Uh, uh, not having that. Don't come here with that. No. So
Uh,
no, I would know. So I like to think I'm still the same person that that I've always been. I hope so anyway.
Well, it seems like you've used, like we said before, your persistence, your patience, and your passion, your self belief to navigate your way through life to where you are in a successful career, and you seem to be living life large. How
I Yeah, man. I say, if I was to die tomorrow, I'd be happy.
good?
Honestly,
What
honestly.
advice could you give to a younger person? You know, your younger self, or to a younger person who wants to do something similar. What advice would you give them?
Don't watch nobody. Don't watch nobody. You do you. Do you. That's it, mate. That do you. I wasted so much of my youth trying to follow fashion. Be like this
Mm.
guy, be like that guy, wear these threads, wear them garms. Do you? Because at the end of the day, when you go to bed at night, you wake up in the morning, it's you. It's you. You won. My granddad used to always tell me, choices. You have to make the right choices, the choices in life you make, and these things, that's just do you live your life the way you want. If you enjoy something, you do that. If you want to do something, you do that. Don't waste your time following other people. That's the one vice. That's the one thing I would say, because I know that growing up where I grew up, it's so much easier to follow suit, follow fashion, and just be like everyone else. It's a lot harder to step away and to do your own thing. But when you do, you just feel so much more better in yourself.
Oh,
So yeah,
that's
that's what I would
brilliant.
do.
Thank you. And I think that's a perfect note on which to end. As you've just said, do you? And I think Jermaine Foster, thank you for being here on We Talk with me and
Thanks for having me.
sharing about how to, follow your passions and your dreams. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thanks for having me. It's been cool. It's been interesting being on this side of the chair. I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you.